everybody. Welcome to my kitchen. It's great to have you back with me again today. Today we're going to be doing a recipe that lots of people love that I make. It's no-bake cookies. I've made these since I was probably about 4th or 5th grade, and I continue to make them, give them a lot as gifts and presents. And everybody always says, Donna, Miss Lanier, what is the secret to your no-bake cookies? You need to make a YouTube video for that. So here we are, we're in my kitchen. I'm gonna take you through my ingredients and what I use. So if you'll follow me over here, look at my ingredients. I usually shop at Food Line, and so I use quick oats. You don't want to use the old-fashioned oats because they're a little bit bigger and thicker, and the cookie's not as good with it. So I use quick oats. It'll take 2.5 cups. Peanut butter, I always use Jif, creamy Jif. I don't use anything else. I'm a big believer in Jif and the quality of the peanut butter. So if you use a no-name brand or a different brand, you may not get as good flavor. And it takes 1/2 cup of peanut butter. For my flavoring, I use vanilla flavoring, and I usually use Happy Home flavoring. You can buy that at Southern Charmers, close to Central Elementary. I use a little dash of salt, so that's my salt shaker. I've got my pot here. I use a stick of butter, and I use the salted kind. I never buy unsalted, so if you see something that says use unsalted, salted works great. You'll need some baking cocoa or cocoa powder, and it takes 4 tablespoons, and I do measure that level. We'll do that in a minute. And I do use the Food Line brand. And then for my milk, it takes 1/2 cup of milk. And I use fat-free milk. It works just fine. But if you have 2% milk or whole milk, just make sure it's in date. And then I've got my sugar container here. It'll take 2 cups of sugar. All right, so the first thing I do, if you'll follow me here to the pot, is just a regular 3-quart saucepan. If you want to double the recipe, you would need a bigger pot. And I've got my measuring here, 1/4 cup. And so it calls for 2 cups. So we'll do a little math here. If it calls for 2 cups, I'll need 8 of these. So I'll count 1, and I do them level, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 8 quarter cups, which is like 2 whole cups of sugar. You'll need a stick of your butter. And I just have everything ready. Makes a big difference with this recipe. Make sure you get all the wrapper off. 2 cups of sugar, a stick of butter. Take my baking cocoa. And you're gonna need a tablespoon measure. And I'm gonna take the back of this spatula to kind of scrape off. And I need 4 level tablespoons. So that's kind of how I do mine. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you're young, if you're a child, you need to make sure you're getting your parents' help with all this, especially with the stove. You wouldn't want to do that. We're going to need our 1/2 cup of milk. And I've got a measure-all cup that measures liquid, so we'll go to 1/2 cup. And if it's a little bit more, I can always just pour right back in. But here's my 1/2 cup. So I have all that ready in here. And I want to kind of sit this to the side because I want to cook all that all at once and be ready. Let's get my other ingredients ready. So you'll come over here with me. One of the secrets to this no-bake cookie is not putting too much oatmeal in it. I've seen some recipes that call for 3 cups of oatmeal. If you do 3 cups, it's going to be just too dry, too hard. So I've got another measuring cup here that'll slide. So we're going to do 1 cup first. And I don't quite fill it all the way up. Almost. A 2nd cup. And then I'm gonna make my cup get a little bit smaller and do a 1/2 cup. So I did actually just a little bit less than 2.5 cups. So you want to have this ready and set this to the side. We're going to put this over here. We're going to take this same measuring cup that we used a moment ago for our milk, and we're going to measure out 1/2 cup of Jif, creamy Jif. And these measure-all cups are great because peanut butter can kind of stick to everything. So I just kind of pack it down in there. I used to sell Pampered Chef years ago when I stayed at home with my son when I took a break from teaching. And their measure-all cups are great. Put my extra back in there. Yep, that's my 1/2 cup. So I'm going to set it over here with my quick oats. I want to make sure my salt and pepper are over here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna make sure my salt is over here, no pepper. And I think we're ready almost, if you'll join me in just a moment at the stove. All right, before we head to the stove, I wanna make sure that you see that you need to have your area where you're gonna put your cookies out. I've got just a long strip of the cut right wax paper, and I've got my scoop ready that I'm gonna use to scoop up my cookies. All right, are you ready to join me at the stove? So here we are at my stove. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn my burner on pretty high. For mine, it would be about medium high. And I'm gonna go ahead while it's warming up, and I'm gonna mix all this together, get the milk mixed in with the sugar, and so the butter will start melting here in a little bit. Get it all kind of mixed in. Some people mix these ingredients one at a time in here, but I've always just dumped them all in here. And once it starts to boil, you let it boil for 1.5 minutes, and I always just constantly stir it. I never stop stirring it. So we'll come back to that in just a moment once it starts to boil, that way you can see it. Okay, so I turned my heat up to high because it was being a little bit slower, and it just depends upon your stove. Remember, if you're a child or a student, you want to make sure you get your parents' help with this part because it's going to start boiling here in just a moment, and it's going to need to boil for 1.5 minutes. And I have my timer set up here on my microwave so that it's ready to go. Once it starts boiling, I hit start, and that way I know I'm just boiling it for 1.5 minutes. That's another one of the secrets to this cookies, and stirring it constantly so it's almost ready to boil. All right, so it's starting to boil, as you can see. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit my start for my 1.5 minute timer, and I'm just gonna keep stirring for the whole 1.5 minutes, but we'll come back to it when 1.5 minutes up. So our 1.5 minutes almost up. I've been constantly stirring the whole 1.5 minutes. All right, so I'm gonna take it off, I'm gonna turn it off, I'm gonna bring it over here where I've got everything set up. That's the secret to these, having everything ready. I always put my salt in first, just a dash of salt, stir it up, put a teaspoon of vanilla, but I just kind of eyeball it. I put my vanilla in next so I can get all the vanilla mixed in. And then the next thing I put in is my peanut butter. I have a certain order that I do it. So get all my peanut butter in there. Next, I'm gonna put in that almost the 2.5 cups of quick oats. So I've got everything in there. So now I'm gonna just mix, mix, mix. Quickly mix it up, and you wanna get all your oats coated, and you want all your peanut butter in there. Sometimes I don't get it quite mixed good enough, and there's streaks of peanut butter in there. That makes it even yummier. The secret to this is once you get it all mixed is to get it put out. The more you handle it as it cools, that sugar starts to kind of crystallize. I'm not a fudge maker. I've tried to make fudge. This is as close to fudge as I can get. People say it's like peanut butter fudge with some oatmeal in it. If you'll look, I think I got all my peanut butter mixed up. Scrape that off. My wax paper is ready. So this is what's great to have these scoops. Again, a Pampered Chef scoop. So I just work quick over here, and I do drip occasionally. You want to work as quick as you can. And these scoops make it much easier. And one batch makes about 36 cookies. These little drippings, these crumbs are great to snack on after they're set up. The pan I'm using is a non-stick pan, which does help. If you look in my pot, you can already see that some of that sugar is starting to kind of go back to its crystallized state. So sometimes the first cookies that you dip out look a little bit runnier than the last cookies, and that's because that sugar's cooling off, kind of like fudge does. Now it does help that I have a granite countertop, and that helps cool mine off a lot quicker. But you can also do them on Formica. Before we remodeled our kitchen, they would set up just fine. They do set up quicker on granite and marble, your stone surfaces. It takes about an hour and a half to kind of set up before you're ready to move them. But I hope you enjoy the no-bake cookies.